The Airbus A380 is the biggest passenger jet in the world, and it can carry more than 500 passengers. While the lives of these passengers were in danger on 10th September 2017. An Emirates A380 carrying 422 passengers approaching into Moscow almost hit the ground with the alarms in the cockpit.
Pull up.
It came as low as
Obstacle ahead.
395
Pull up.
feet, about 7 miles before the runway. It was a close call for Emirates Flight 131. Let's find out what happened. Emirates Flight EK131 was a scheduled flight from Dubai International Airport to Domodedovo International Airport in Moscow, operated on 10th of September 2017. It was an Airbus A380 with the registration Alpha 6 Echo Echo Zulu. There were a total of 448 people on board, comprising 422 passengers, 2 flight crew members, and 24 cabin crew members. It was a sunny day and the A380 was parked at the gate. The passengers were on board and the EK131 was ready for departure. They pushed back and taxied to the runway 30 left. Everything was normal while pressing the subscribe button. Jokes apart, the aircraft took off with no abnormalities, and so was the flight until it reached Moscow after 6 hours. As they descended and came into land, they had a runway change from the one in the original flight plan. They were cleared for the runway 14 right ILS approach when it was on the base leg. Now, runway changes by ATC are very normal and happen on daily basis, and it can happen due to various reasons. However, when it started its final turn, EK131 descended below its cleared altitude of 500 meters QFE prior to establishing on the localizer. The ATC noticed something unusual with the descent rate and alerted the crew. They immediately performed a go-around, and it was at this point the aircraft got low as 395 feet above the ground before the ground proximity warning system activated. The EGPWS, the glide slope, and the terrain ahead warning were also activated. Once they had a positive rate of climb, they requested for another approach with radar vectors. As they completed the misapproach procedure and were vectored to final, on the second landing attempt, they couldn't land the plane again and performed a discontinued approach. And now it was the third attempt of the Emirates Super Jumbo. The pilots were desperate to get it on the ground, but thankfully, the A380 landed safely on runway 14 right without any injury to the passengers and crew. Now, firstly, the question that comes into everyone's mind: what took them 3 attempts to land, and why did they descend so quick that the alarms went off? After investigation, it was found that on the first attempt, when EK131 was coming in for the first approach, there was poor communication between the flight crew, and that they were in error believing that the plane would capture the 3-degree glide slope from above. Basically, the glide slope is captured on an altitude set on the approach plate, and if you are above or below it, you can be destabilized on the approach. Also, Airbus and Emirates outlines that the glide interception from above procedure should only be applied when the aircraft is established on the localizer. In this case, they were not established on the localizer, and therefore the crew did not comply with the SOPs. Also, the pilots focused on the horizontal position of the aircraft to establish it on the localizer, and neither pilot had a correct awareness of the aircraft's vertical position. Also, when the glide interception from above procedure was performed and the go-around, Emirates Flight EK131 position was initially outside the azimuthal coverage of the ILS glide slope signal. The azimuthal coverage is basically the extent of the area the antenna covers. Now that you know what azimuthal coverage is, it's much easier for you to understand what was going on. Now, because of this, invalid glide slope deviation indications were displayed to the flight crew, which led to the descent below its cleared altitude. Now, also, co-pilot referred only to the glide slope deviation indication to determine the aircraft vertical position instead of considering and cross-checking any other available indications such as pressure, altitude, vertical and navigation displays, and the DME distance in the table, which would have enabled him to reconsider and validate the aircraft position. Also, the crew expected that the ATC would not give them vectors to intercept the localizer at an angle of 45 degrees or less. They thought that it would be a very tight approach. Also, the ATC gave them an instruction to maintain relatively high speeds until the aircraft was almost abeam of the initial approach fix, which gave them less time, and it resulted in an unusually high workload in this approach phase. On the second approach, the investigation found other issues. The flight plan had disappeared from the FMS, leaving a blank screen. There was no flight plan on the navigation display. Now, after the first go around, the FMS system was not reconfigured by resequencing the flight plan as per standard operating procedures by the flight crew. There was also oscillation around the localizer course. This caused the pilots to select the waypoint using the direct to function. Now, when you select the direct to function, you're commanding the aircraft to go directly to the waypoint, and the vertical profile should be managed by manual inputs in the autopilots. But these inputs were not done, and this caused the plane to level off at 2600 feet QNH. And since they were too high and not stable, another go around was performed, and this was the second one. The pilots believed that even if they didn't do it, it would not have a problem in capturing the localizer by the automatic flight system. After 3 years of investigation, on April 16, 2020, the UAE General Civil Aviation Authority issued a final report on Emirates flight EK131. They made few safety recommendations to Emirates, Airbus and Domodedovo's air traffic control. The ATC was speaking in Russian to other aircraft, which could have led to a confusion. And as the Super Jumbo was descending below 500 meters, the duration of the radar control's instruction to the flight crew not to descend further was lengthy, and the phraseology used was non-standard for urgent instruction. It would have been better to be short and to the point. They recommended Airbus to update the operations manual to emphasize that the A380 pilots must ensure that the aircraft is established on the localizer before trying to intercept the glide slope from above.